What is up, Maniacs, and welcome to Broadened Horizon. This is episode 20. I'm your host, as always, Drake Riggs. On this episode, we continue to celebrate the 2-year anniversary of Broadened Horizon with a very fun 5-guest lineup ahead of Horizon 39 on October 23rd. Kicking things off on this episode will be one of the big Super Horizon winners, Kouzi Tanaka, who defeated Jizzy in the Super Horizon co-main event. Then the Horizon president Nobuyuki Sakakibara joins us to recap the recent doubleheader and look ahead to the end of 2022. Soo-Chul Kim follows the boss and discusses his big upset win at Horizon 38 against Hiromasa Uikubo. Then the GOAT returns as we catch up with Megumi Fujii before closing things out with Horizon featherweight champion Juntaro Ushiku. Ushiku defends his title in Horizon 39's main event against Kleber Koike. Thanks as always to all of them for chatting, and thanks so much to everyone who has supported the show and asks questions for the end, whether you've been watching on YouTube or listening on Spotify. Don't forget to hit like and share if you enjoy. First up, we welcome Kouzi. All right, Kouzi, well, it's great to see you, man. Congrats on the great win this past weekend. Just happy Thursday. How are you doing?
ずっと酔っ払ってます。
I've been intoxicated this entire time since the...
I've been just in full party mode, man. Just living it up.
ひたすらパーティーです。
Yes, I've been partying it up ever since.
Right on. That's the way to do it. So, I mean, just as for this fight with Jizzy, man, obviously it was a great performance by you. Got the finish there. Just styled on him, really. Where does it kind of rank, I guess, against your weirdest experiences? Not really just in fighting, but in life, because it was obviously a very unique thing. He's not a fighter. Just where does it rank, I guess, amongst things you've experienced?
へんてこな、へんてこな。
Yeah, you know, Drake, I consider this as a party. It was a big party. It's Super Horizon, you know? And I didn't consider this combat sport. I didn't consider it as competition. This was straight up, it's a brawl. And I took this fight headed into it as a brawl. And as a result, I think I am the only Japanese person to beat somebody affiliated with the money team. So that makes me feel good.
That's certainly a very good accomplishment to have when you look at it that way, man. And, you know, you've done these exhibitions kind of before with Takanori Gomi, right? Who, an actual fighter, a legend of Japanese combat sports. Did this feel, you know, significantly different than that match? Because, you know, Gomi was also bigger than you, but was an actual fighter. Like, were they similar, or was this a completely different thing for you? Like you said, it was a party, right?
やっぱゴミ選手の時は自分が弱かったんで。
When I fought Gomi, I was weak as a fighter. I was not decorated, so I lost him. But right now, if I fight Gomi, I can beat him. I'm very confident. I'm a different fighter than I fought Gomi back then. But the one thing that I did focus on for this fight was the Bob Sapp versus Ernesto Hoost. Ernesto won the K1 Grand Prix 3 times. He was an all-time champion. And Bob Sapp didn't know anything about fighting. He was just green as they come. But Bob Sapp was able to beat Ernesto twice. And I was not about to follow his tracks. Because if I lost to a non-fighter, like an absolute beginner, I wouldn't be able to walk on the streets. So that's something that I really did focus on. So in that sense, it was very different than fighting Gomi.
Yeah, it's a very good motivation to have, man, and ended up paying off just fine. And did everything go as you expected it to? I think that, you know, you were very close to putting him away there at the end of the second round, but, you know, got the job done in the third. So, like, I don't know, was he tougher than you thought? Did you do everything you wanted in there? Just like, how did it meet your expectations of as you were going into it?
いや、1ラウンドでぶっ倒す気やったんですけどね。
Yeah, so I wanted to finish him in the first round, but I kind of hesitated because he was a lot bigger than I anticipated. When we actually met him in the ring, he was so much bigger, and I wanted to finish in the first round, but you know, I couldn't. And he was a lot better than I anticipated. Obviously, the skill sets are different. I have a much better skill set, but he was better than I thought he would be. He was tough and he was big. He was much bigger than I anticipated. So, yeah, those are my, you know, things that went beyond my expectations.
Fair enough, man. And, you know, combat sports in general, a very serious thing, you know, a very competitive thing to be a part of. But, you know, in cases like this, or in general, do you think it's important just to have fun in fighting and maybe take things a little bit lighter at times? So I don't know, maybe you're not stressed out all the time. How do you look at it from that perspective of enjoying just kind of this whole journey that you've had as a fighter?
もちろん思いますよ。格闘技は
So I think I look at combat sports as a tool to earn money and climb up the ladder in life. So I'm using, combat sports as a tool. So in order to do that, in order to, same as Mayweather, in order to earn money, you have got to train harder than anybody. You got to dedicate yourself to this sport more than anybody. So, this is what I do. I train harder than anybody. I party harder than anybody, and I play with girls more than anybody. And that's what I do to support, eventually live a nice life and take care of my family.
A true prize fighter, man. Very nicely said there. So with all that in mind, Kouzi, man, like, do you have an idea of what you want to do next and maybe when, or is it too early to kind of think about that stuff?
いや、メイウェザーとやりたいですけどね。でも
So ultimately, it'd be nice to face Floyd Mayweather because, all the guys in TMT, they're nice guys, but they're just big. That's all. I didn't feel any skill from them, and they're just big Americans. So, eventually I would want Floyd Mayweather, but meanwhile, I'd want to take those big guys without any skills out one by one, and hopefully I get the big boss.
So you could be the money team killer, man. That could be a new nickname if you could pull this off.
もうそうですよ。もうアジア
So yeah, I think I've already started, my first step as that name. And I think I'm the only Asian to become victorious over the Mana team. So I want to keep on fighting. I want to fight in the States. If there's an event in Hawaii, I'd like to take part in it, and I'd like to fight another money team groupie.
Yeah, it would be certainly cool to see, man. And, we know you're a great kickboxer, Kouzi, but I'm curious, having competed for Rizin as many times as you have now, is there any interest at all from you to try out MMA, or are we kind of beyond that? Are you not interested in grappling at all? Just what are your thoughts on MMA?
もちろんありますよ。
Of course, I have interest in fighting MMA.
All right, very cool, man. And I mean, just as for combat sports in general, how did you kind of fall into this path? I know you just said, right, that you want to make the money and, all the fame and everything that comes along with prize fighting in general. But for you, was that the thought initially when you got into kickboxing and fighting? Like, how did it all begin for you?
喧嘩で一番強いっていうことを証明したかったから。
I wanted to prove that I was the best in street and brawling. I was the best brawler.
All right, fair enough, man. You've done a pretty good job of proving that indeed. So like if you never got into fighting, then Kouzi, is there something else you could envision yourself doing, whether it's, maybe one of your other passions outside of fighting, if you have any, like, what do you think you'd be doing if you didn't fall into punching people in the face, man?
今もやってますけど。
So I would anticipate, I'm currently an entrepreneur myself. So I think I'd still be an entrepreneur, being filthy rich, being a young entrepreneur with tons of money, or I could probably, I might end up just being like a regular staff at a whorehouse.
All right, there you go. Definitely a unique approach to take, man, but there's always options, right? So but as for fighting though, Kouzi, like, you fought a lot of great guys in your career, man. Legends, like we said, with Gomi, and you fought Tenshin before, and plenty of other names. List goes on and on. Is there somebody for you that stands out as the toughest opponent that you've fought in your career?
難しいけど、まあ誰やろ。みんな強かったスター。
Yeah, that's a hard one, Drake. That's a very hard question. Everybody was tough. Everybody I fought has been tough, but if I had to name a couple, it'd be Staris and Hirotaka Urabe. Those two are like very, very tough.
All right, definitely some interesting selections there. And, I did mention Tenshin, but you also fought Takaru, and those guys finally got to fight this year. I'm sure that you ended up, watching the match, their big fight that went down. And, having fought both of them, man, you have a great perspective of, how it went down and everything. So I'm curious, did it play out as you expected it to?
い いや、あんなに天心が圧倒するとは思わなかった。
No, I didn't anticipate that at all. I did not expect Tenshin to be dominant as he was during that fight. I mean, when you look at that fight, you know, I think my fight versus Tenshin was a lot more was better, and I fought better than Takeru did against Tenshin. You know, I think that Takeru is still it just showed that he's super weak.
You know, with a guy like Tenshin, it's very interesting to see his career go on now and what he's supposed to be leaving kickboxing, and you know, kind of a bummer because he's still very young, and I think fans would love to see maybe a rematch between them, or you know, a rematch between you guys. Do you look at those kind of things as possibilities ever between some of your past opponents and being like, oh, I'd love to get that one back?
そうですね。タケルとやりたいですね。
Yeah, if I had to pick some, I'd definitely like to fight Takeru again. I think I'm a much better fighter than him now. My boxing skills are much better now, and I'm very confident that I can beat him. And if he doesn't feel the merit of fighting me in a rematch in kickboxing, I can fight him in boxing, or hell, I'll even fight him in MMA. So, you know, I know that he doesn't like me. I don't like him. It leads to a great story.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Can't go wrong with that one. So fingers crossed, maybe it can happen someday. That would be definitely cool. But speaking of kind of the tough opponents that you had and everything, Kouzi, I want to give you another tough question here, man. Like, when you look at all the accomplishments and achievements that you've had in your career, like, what is the proudest one that you have? Is there something that stands out amongst all your wins, or maybe even little moments just along the journey? What would you say has been your proudest accomplishment?
まあ、2つあって、
So actually, there's two moments. The first moment is that when I was still not even before recognized, not even fighting for K1, I was still fighting in the local circuits outside of the major cities. I was starting small promotions, and I called out the current or the then champion Urabe, and I got the fight. I was able to get that fight. I called him out. I got the fight, and I beat him. And that is definitely one of my proudest moments. And my second time is when I left K1 and fought Tenshin. I was under a strict contract with K1, but I paid my penalties. I made the move, and I made the fight with Tenshin happen in Ryzen. So those two are the things that I'm very proud of, where I actually made my own actions and made my desires happen.
Yeah, definitely some very good ones, man, and always great to be able to, you know, make the dreams come true like that. And you know, before I let you go here, Kouzi, you mentioned, you know, the first one there was before you were famous or well known, but now you're a very popular guy. Have a whole lot of fans, very passionate fan base, and a very just popular fighter in general. So I want to leave you with a fun question here, man. Like, what would you say has been maybe the craziest or wackiest fan interaction that you've had? If there has been maybe a story you could share.
セックス
Yes. セックスって。
何どういうことですかね、ぶっ飛んだ。いや、クレイジーなファン、まあ、殺人予告とか。
Yeah, so the first thing he said was, you know, sex, right? But that's not crazy enough. So he said that he's received death threats because fans like him too much. He received messages of, can you please end your life with me? Those types of messages he's been receiving. And he does remember that one time he had to do like an autograph session with the police guarding him to make sure that he's safe. So those are kind of crazy experiences that he has had from, you know, female fans.
Wow. All right. Those are definitely some pretty crazy stories, man. Is it scary to deal with that kind of thing? You know, that's kind of when you know you've made it, Kouzi.
全然怖くないです。俺、アホなんで、全然怖くないです。
Yeah, it's not scary at all. I don't really take it seriously. I'm not intelligent enough to think that it's scary. So I'm okay.
All right. Well, appreciate the honesty, sir. And yes, definitely could probably defend yourself for the most part with the fighting background. But all right, Kouzi, we can leave it off there, man. Very fun getting to chat with you. Always fun getting to watch you fight, man. A total entertainer. Looking forward to whatever's next. Congratulations again on this first win over the money team, making some history, a good accomplishment, like you said. So very fun to see, and hope that you get to do maybe more of those in the future like you're wanting. So just a big thank you so much for taking time. Arigato gozaimashita. And wish you all the best. And you can continue the party right now for as long as you possibly can, man. Don't drink yourself to death this time around, but have fun. Make sure you enjoy it.
また
ありがとうございました。楽しかったです。ありがとうございます。またお願いします。
Drake, I had fun. Thank you very much. Let's do this again.
Welcome back to the show, the president of Ryzen himself, Nobuyuki Sakakibara. All right. Well, great to see you as always, Sakakibara-san, man. Just how are you doing today? Happy Thursday to you, sir.
Yeah, pretty good. We are fine.
Awesome. Yeah, coming off the heels of a big double-header event. Always a fun one when you get a halftime show this time. There was a lot going on. It was a big kind of fun party of a show, double-header show that we had this past weekend. Just were you satisfied with the turnout? How was the event from your perspective?
Yes, almost all fine. We are satisfied.
And I mean, I'm curious, like second time with Floyd, right? He's a big attraction, big star, one of the best boxers of all time, having him in the main event. How do you kind of compare the success of this event compared to the first time you had him with the tension fight? Obviously, you did things a little bit differently in terms of, having him fight earlier rather than at the end of the Ryzen 14 show the first time. Just how do you compare the success, I guess, of both of the two Floyd events you've done now?
本当にまずは2度
First of all, having Floyd participate in our event once, it can be considered as some kind of an accident. It's just a one-time, whatever happened. But for him to come twice and compete twice in the Ryzen ring, I think that shows some kind of a statement. And in a case, in a way you look at it, getting him in the Ryzen ring for the second time, that itself is a statement. I considered that a success.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm kind of assuming then, did maybe he approach you for this return to the Ryzen ring, or maybe was it a collaborative effort? Like, how did it come to be in the first place to have him get back in there?
1回目の大会終わった後もお互い
compared to the first, now that we've done this for the second time, compared to the first time, I just believe that there is a huge difference in an amount of relationship and trust amongst both parties, because the first time it was Floyd's first exhibition ever. It was his first fight outside of the United States. They had their concerns. They didn't know what to expect. This is the first time working with a Japanese promotion. They didn't know us. There's just so many obstacles and concerns that they had. So now that we've done this for the second time, we do believe that we have a much better understanding on who we are, what each parties are for. And during the pandemic, we went to Vegas, we sat down and talked with them several times, and just it took time for us to build that relationship, that business relationship with them. So the obvious difference from the first one is that we have that trust amongst each other, and that made things a lot more smooth in terms of operation wise.
お互いの信頼関係がある中での今回結果ではありますね。
Yeah, that absolutely makes a whole lot of sense. And I guess it kind of maybe answers a little bit of the question with the main event, because I think a lot of people, the co-main, excuse me, a lot of people were surprised to see, Floyd's bodyguard, Jizzy having a fight in Ryzen of all people. Not a lot of people were maybe sure who he was at first, but then I was like, oh, okay, it's this guy. So how did that come to be? Was that just tell me kind of the story, I guess, because it was obviously something that caught us off guard.
そういう意味でね、何度もアメリカに
Yes, so like we mentioned, during the COVID times, we visited Las Vegas several times to meet with Floyd. And throughout those visits, throughout those times, you get to know the people around him, and you get to talk to the people around Floyd. And obviously, one of the people around him was Jizzy. And he's mentioned several times throughout the times we went to Vegas that he was showing his interest, that he wanted to fight in Japan. He wanted to perform in Japan. So at the time, we didn't really have an idea, an angle on how to get it. It's very interesting for sure. It's going to be very interesting, but we didn't have the right idea, the right story on how to get him on the Ryzen ring. So, we told him that, and the next thing we know is that, during the Hawaii presser, he's up there, he's shoving Asakura, he's gathering all the attention, and that's when we figured, this is it. He gathered the information or the attention that he deserves. So now we asked him, okay, so you got the attention, we can create the storyline, would you like to fight? And he said yes. So that's how it all got, booked from there.
Well, you're getting very creative, sir, with all these types of individuals competing for the promotion. And I remember on April Fool's Day this year, I mean, you were teasing us with the photo shoot of you putting on the gloves, Sakakibara. So I feel like we're going to see you competing next.
Yeah, that picture is real, but I have no intention of fighting whatsoever. So that picture was a true April Fool's joke.
Yes, it was definitely fun to see, though. That's for sure. Leaves people imagining what could have been. But I mean, it's interesting too, Sakakibara. Like, you look at the first Floyd fight with Tenshin, of course, and there were kind of these rumblings around that time too, and it got brought up again here before this one with Mikuru, specifically Chael Sonnen of some of the names. He was pointing out how he believes that Floyd's fights in Japan, they're fixed, that they aren't real fights and this kind of thing. And just for you as the promoter and putting on these shows, like, is it frustrating to hear people kind of put those things out there and, say that the fights aren't legitimate?
One thing I'd like to say is that, it's for those who have actually seen the fight, it's hard to actually fix something like that. And if you just watch the fight, it's just super hard to understand or even acknowledge that it was a fixed fight. I've never met Chael Sonnen. I don't know Chael Sonnen. I don't really know about him. But, the fact that they are trying to get attention with what we make and what we do, that itself is, I look at it in a good way. I don't really care what people say, because at least they're talking about it. And for me, I think haters are just as great as followers, because they talk about it and they spread the word. So, for me, it doesn't really bother me. And for those who have a legitimate eye, who actually watch the fight, I mean, they'll know if it's fixed or not, and they can make the decision themselves.
Yes, a very good perspective indeed, and I think very well said for sure. And, just speaking of kind of all these big names, Sakakibara, I know you're always keeping up with kind of the things that are happening just in the MMA world in general, and, having just had a big name like Floyd compete for you once again, we have a big name free agent out there right now, and Nate Diaz, who I'm sure you've maybe been hearing about, he's a free agent now. So, I mean, is that somebody you would ever pursue? Obviously, he seems to be interested in boxing, so I mean, that is a possibility you could have for him do one of these standing rules matches if there was something you could agree upon there. But is he a guy that you think would maybe be a very interesting personality to have in Japan? Maybe somebody like the American version of the Asakura brothers a little bit. But is that a guy who, I mean, at least you're open to trying to maybe do something with?
Yeah, so Nick and Nate and Nick, they both have a great personality. Their fighting style is very exciting, and we've known them since the Pride days. Actually, we've had Nick fight in Pride before, and we've known them from way back. So if we were to do something with Floyd again, we always have to talk about an opponent, and we do think we're at a point where we can't just only focus on the Japanese market anymore, and we have to target the international audience. So with that said, Floyd's opponent doesn't have to be a Japanese fighter anymore. So, and it's just one possibility, just thinking about the future. But, not only, Floyd's opponent, but, Nate Diaz as an individual has a great amount of, he has a great character, fight style, and he has a great following internationally. So as an individual, he would definitely be somebody we'd be interested to be talking to.
Yeah, wow. I mean, I didn't even really put it together there that I guess there would be that possibility of Floyd versus Nate as an option for maybe a third, Floyd fight in Rizin. He did say he wants to fight MMA fighters continually and YouTubers or whatever it may be. So, I mean, geez, Sakakibara, that's a very interesting thought. I mean, how realistic do you think it is for you guys to maybe make that one happen. Diaz versus Mayweather in the Ryzen ring. That's a crazy idea.
いや、まあ、全然あり得ると思いますね。
Floyd, Floyd didn't, he's not, he didn't mention that he's only going to fight Japanese people in Japan. Obviously his next fight in Dubai, he's fighting a British guy from the UK, probably a YouTuber or whatnot, but as long as we can provide something that people want to see and that people talk about, that is what, as a promoter, that is what we want to deliver. It's always nice to show, the Mayweather exhibition challenges and whatever we can do to exceed people's expectations, that's the goal in terms of announcing a fight. So whatever gathers attention, exceeds people's, surprises people, is what we want to shoot for. So with that said, it would be interesting to be talking to Nate and, bringing up the idea to Floyd.
ネイトとフロイドがやったら、アメリカのファンたちはどんな感触になる、どんな反響になると思いますか?
So asking you, Drake, what kind of reaction would the North American audience respond to if we announced the Nate versus Floyd fight, exhibition fight?
Oh my goodness. I think that would be, if you look at kind of all the options out there, Sakakibara, I mean, that would be about as big as it possibly could be. And a surprise, I haven't really seen anyone thinking about that. Everyone's thinking about, Nate Diaz versus Jake Paul. That's kind of what everyone's fixated on, or maybe something with the Paul brothers. But if you throw in the Floyd idea and he says he wants to keep doing it, I think that would be maybe the biggest surprise and most interesting thing that could maybe happen, honestly.
So,
Nate's kind of like the global Asakura brothers. The Diaz brothers are the global Asakura brothers, and who would not want to see them fight? Take on Floyd Mayweather. And Floyd's been doing. He's been perfecting boxing his entire career. Now he's willing to, do these exhibitions to fight different professions like MMAs, YouTubers. And it's right now. I think it's the time. That is what sells, and that is what people are entertained by. And these big competitions, exhibitions amongst different professions is something that really gathers attention and gets people talking. And like I said earlier, we need to not only focus on the Japanese market now, but we really want to focus on the North American market. And if these types of matches help us attract attention and globally, and especially in North America, that might be the thing that we want to do. Our angle, our way of making content is to entertain people and deliver the content internationally, and pretty much entertain the people who watch. So that's where we're coming from. That's where our ideas are coming from. See, the better chance of, if Nate Diaz even might have a chance of beating Floyd, and for us to promote that fact, that what if factor, is definitely something that we need to promote for these exhibitions against Floyd. So, making the people think maybe, what if, that if factor, Nate Diaz can bring all of that. So we do think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I think we're definitely onto something here, Sakakibara. That got some serious potential. See what can be worked out. But man, yeah, that's a fun idea to think about for sure. But what has also been fun so far, man, looking back at this past weekend, the Atomweight Grand Prix continued, got the semifinals. We know what the finals will be now, right? That's the first fight. Technically for New Year's, we'll see Sayakizawa versus Siwoo Park, the rematch to close out the tournament. Just as for this whole thing this year, has the tournament kind of panned out as you expected it to, or have there been some surprises with who's gone on to win and whatnot?
Yes, we do believe that the atomweight, the division, the 49 kilos, the 108-pound division in Japan, we have the most top talents in the world in this division. We do believe so. But one thing that's certain is that throughout this Grand Prix, we have definitely seen the alternation of generations. We've definitely seen that. Obviously, Izawa, many people thought Izawa was the favorite, but for Park to beat Kanna Asakura and then beat Ayaka Hamasaki to make it to the finals, that just shows how the era the sport is changing. and it definitely shows that the new younger generation are taking over. So, you know, if Izawa takes this entire Grand Prix, that kind of concludes what we've been doing here at the super atomweight division. And, you know, that's something that can conclude a story, but, you know, we might have something else to move on. But throughout this Grand Prix, we have definitely seen the change of generations, and that's a fact.
Yeah, definitely some very talented, you know, young ladies coming up. Sekizawa, very impressive, and as is Park, of course. And unfortunately, we did miss out on, you know, Reina competing against the champion in Sayaka here. She had the injury from her first fight, and so I'm just kind of curious, Sakakibara, is the idea maybe to have her fight the winner of the tournament now, or do you think, depending on when she's ready, just what are you kind of thinking for Reina's return?
So a lot of this will have to do based off of the results of how the fight goes with the finals against Izawa and Park. You know, the super atomweight, the future of the super atomweight division will definitely rely on the results of on New Year's Eve. You know, and sadly, Reina is not. The division is not revolving around Reina anymore. And, you know, that might be one of the reasons why we're seeing this alternation of generations. You know, she's not part of, the division is not revolving around her. And, you know, like she cannot start. She's at a point where she cannot make an action. She has to make a reaction of what's going on. So I think it all depends on, you know, what she wants to do and how the super atomweight division pans out. So I think, you know, she's going to have to adapt to what's going on in the division. And depending on who becomes champion, who is the champion in the super atomweight division, you know, we might just conclude a story in this division and move on. So a lot of it, you know, it's fluctuating. But as for Reina, you know, she needs to figure out where she wants to be in order to keep herself involved with everything that's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely going to be a bit of a waiting game to see how things shake out. But also on Rizin 38, we saw, you know, Kyoji Horiguchi come back with a great win in the main event over Kintaro there. So I'm curious, Sakakibara, you know, now he's out of his own tournament that was going on in Bellator. Like, is the hope for him to defend the title next, maybe at New Year's Eve or something like that? Or do you think that he'll go back to Bellator before he does end up defending the Rizin title again?
Yes, as far as Horiguchi goes, you know, it's more about this is something that is not just Kyoji's, you know, not responsibility, but his idea. This is more about, you know, we need to talk to Scott Coker. It's more about a Bellator and Rizin. What Bellator and Rizin does next will definitely involve Kyoji. So this is something that we cannot directly decide on our own. You know, it has to be done through a lot of communications with Scott Coker, and depending on which direction that we want to head in, you know, it's going to change what Kyoji is going to be doing based off of our decisions. So this is something that we need to talk about and figure out in order to determine what his next steps are. You know, Kyoji already mentioned after the fight that he would really want to fight at flyweight, but Bellator doesn't have that division. You know, so there's a lot of things to consider and a lot of things to need to pan out before we make these decisions on Kyoji's future.
Yeah, certainly makes sense. And with all that in mind, Sakakibara, last thing I'll leave you with here, man. Like, are there any big plans that you can share for us for New Year's Eve? Is there the Bellator collaboration going to be coming back this year? Is that possible, or just anything that you can tease us with for how you're going to close out this year?
Well, let me leave you with this. We're ready to work with them, and you know, when you look through the industry, it's Bellator and Rizin who are the only two brands who are willing to work together and cooperate to put on events and put on something big for the fans. You know, like exchanging fighters, doing some brand promoting, team versus team, and you know, I think we are the only promoters who can make this new movement and create something new that nobody else is doing. So, obviously it's, we have to run our own business. So a lot of things have to make sense in a way. So we've been talking to Scott for a long time about the idea, throwing about ideas, possibilities, and we've been talking about it for a long time. And, we do believe that, Scott definitely holds the key here. So, but like I said, in the current industry, we are the only ones who can do something, and we are the only ones who can make something new. So, the rest you can ask Scott and see what he says. But yeah, we'll leave it there. But we'd love to do something, and we are ready for it.
Yes, and the fans would absolutely love to see it. It's always a good time, getting people together and working together. So fingers crossed that you can pull off something here soon. But until that happens, Sakakibara, it's always a pleasure getting to chat, man. It's always very fun just talking about the world of MMA and things going on in Rizin. So I appreciate you greatly for taking the time. Big thank you. Big arigato gozaimashita, as always, sir. And I wish you the best of luck with things going forward. We'll always be tuning in. So just thank you so much for the time, and I hope you have a great rest of the day, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you very much.
Fresh off his big upset victory over Hiromasa Ogikubo, it's Soo-Chul Kim. All right. Well, it is great to see you, Soo-Chul, man. Congratulations on the very big win at Rizin this past weekend. So I just got to know how you doing today. Happy, what is it, Friday for you?
뭐 축하해 주셔서 너무 감사하고.
Thank you for celebrating. Thank you for everything. It's I'm also happy that I have a big win, but wasn't KO knockout, but I'm still happy that I had that win against Ogi Korea.
Yes, it was definitely a very impressive performance nonetheless, man. And I mean, just with all that in mind, like, did you do anything special to celebrate, or do you like to kind of treat the victories as all the same?
후자죠. 네. 똑같은.
He said, it's the same. It's the same. He feels the same. Not too good, not too bad. He just had another win, and that's it. He's gonna fight again. So it's the same. He didn't do anything special for that win.
Well, I mean, we can argue with that, man. It was, beating a guy like him who won the tournament last season in Rizin, pretty big deal. So, I mean, just as for the fight itself, like, did that play out how you kind of expected it to? I know you wanted to finish and you got pretty close there at a point, whether it was by finishing him yourself or with the doctors looking at his eye. So you did some real damage. Like, did the fight go and meet your expectations in terms of what happened in there?
뭐 일단 시합에서 사실 구보 선수를 무시하는
I
건
didn't look
아닌데
down on him, but
좀
he thought the
제가
fight
좀 더
would
쉽게
be
경기를 할 줄
easier
알았어요.
than
되게 좀
what
쉽게
actually
경기를
happened
할 줄
there.
알았고
He was looking for finish, but in the first
금방
round,
경기가
it was
끝날
all
것
different from
같다는
what he thought.
느낌이
So in the second
들었었는데
round, he looked for a finish, but he couldn't do it.
1라운드 초반부터 그게 빗나갔죠. 그래서
Yeah, we'll definitely got close, like I said there, man, and we're able to do a good amount of damage and secure the win. So that's all that matters in the end, right? And with that in mind, like, where do you kind of rank this one amongst your biggest career wins? So you've had some great ones in your career. Beating a guy like Hiromasa, is this the best one you've had yet, or do you think something else was a little bit better?
일단 뭐 전에 뭐
Yeah, I wouldn't say this was the best. He fought Bibiano. He also fought Marlon Sandro. He couldn't beat those fighters, but definitely I wouldn't say this was the best. But I'm looking for something better against Kouzi or other fighters Rising would bring to him. Next for the next fights, he's looking for better ones.
라이진에 다른 좋은 선수들이 많으니까.
Of course, man. Always got to keep climbing upward, and you're doing a good job of that, obviously. And, it's kind of crazy, Soo-Chul, man. You look at your Rizin debut was back in kind of the beginning of when things kicked off in 2015, and then you came back here for this one. Like, how did kind of the experiences compare here? Was it a lot different all these years later coming to Rizin compared to when you made your debut for them in 2015?
퀸튼 잭슨이 얘기한 것처럼
Okay, like what Quentin Jackson said about aging. I came here 7 years. I'm 7 years older than before. I'm now really older than
왔지만 열심히 해서 왔다고 생각을 하고
I am back in
좀 더 잘할 수 있게끔
2015.
많은
Yeah, I'm taking.
비타민과 영양
I've been working a
아미노산을
lot.
더
I've been working out a
더
lot,
좋은
and
경기를
I've been taking a lot of
만들어낼 수
vitamins
있으면
and
좋을 것 같아요.
amino to be better all the time for the next fight.
Absolutely, man. We saw that in the last performance. It's working out for you. And hey, you mentioned what you might want next, and the potential for a Kyoji Horiguchi fight. Who he's the champ right now, and he just on the same card, got back in the win column, beat Kintaro in the main event. Good stuff from him too, and beating a guy like Hiro Masa, who was the tournament winner, like I said, from last year. People kind of thought, all right, maybe he'll jump right into his trilogy with Kyoji. But now that you beat him, you think that you're pretty deserving of the title fight with Kyoji next, if that can happen? Or do you expect maybe they'd give you another big name instead?
뭐 제가 뭐 대회사는 아니니까
I'm not
잘
rising, so
모르겠어요.
I don't really know what they're
잘
thinking.
모르겠고
But I'm waiting. I
그냥
already
저는
called
일단 기다릴
Kyoji,
뿐이죠. 일단
but
콜지는
they might
콜을
give me
한번
someone
해볼게요.
else. So I'm gonna
콜지가
get
안
ready.
되더라도 다른
Yeah, I wanted to work.
선수를
I wanted to train this week, but I'll
정도로
take
지금
this week
준비는
off and
해가야죠.
I'll start
일단
training again
이번 주도
from next week
사실은
for the next fight.
좀 운동을 하려고 하다가
Of course, man. Earned a little break after the big win, of course. And is there any interest at all to pursue maybe the featherweight title, Soo-Chul? Because, you are the featherweight champion in Road FC, right? So you've kind of been able to do both divisions in your careers, bantamweight and featherweight. Is there any idea to maybe go after that one in Ryzen if possible?
그럼요. 이번에 사실
Okay, yeah, of
원래는
course he wants to go to
시합이 있을 줄
featherweight
알았어요.
because
로드에서.
he was basically expecting
근데
a
부시에서
featherweight fight in Road
시합이 있을
FC,
줄 알고 좀
but
초중을
he's got an offer from
풀려놨었는데
Rising in
이제
bantamweight,
벤텀
so he
시합이
had to lose
잡혀져서
weight
이제
quickly.
급하게 이제
During the
경기를
course, he had
준비하느라고 감량을
stomach
하더라고요.
illness. So yeah,
시합
after
전에 이제 위험이
winning title or
위에
finishing
염증이
my journey
생겨서
in bantamweight,
좀
he wants to go to
힘들었는데
featherweight. He's getting older and yeah,
이번에는 뭐
it's not
벤텀
easy for
끌고
him to
잘
lose weight,
마무리되면은
cut weights.
Understandable, man. And yeah, getting older in fight years, maybe 12 years as a professional now, which is a good dozen of an accomplishment to have, man. But right in the prime in terms of the numbers, though, just 30 years old still. So pretty young, right in that middle area, right? And, you fought all in Asia, Soo-Chul. I'm curious, do you have any goals to, if anything arises, maybe possibilities of competing in the USA at some point? There's Ryzen has the deal with, or the friendship at least with Bellator, so they've seen fighters go back and forth there. Would that ever be something that you think would be fun to be a part of?
좋게 생각합니다. 좋게 생각하고
He thinks it's excellent, as long as they pay me good. Yeah, he's gonna do anything. He is gonna have a newborn baby next year. So yeah, if they pay me right, he's gonna do it.
All right, cool. Congrats on the impending fatherhood then, man. That's definitely an exciting thing. I mean, how excited are you for that?
애기 처음에는
At first, I thought my life was over,
이제 내 인생은
but after
끝났어,
thinking
이렇게
about it,
했는데
yeah, after
또 이제
the
애기가
baby is born, it's gonna be
태어나면은 또
really. I'm
매일
gonna be
보는
happy to
맛에
see
또
him, taking
산다고
care of him.
하니까 또 상상을 해보니
I'm
좋은
just
것 같기도 하고
imagining, the happy
그래서
thoughts,
지금은
happy things
행복한
about
그
the life
상상을
with
많이
the
그리고
baby.
있어요.
Absolutely, man. Very exciting. So congratulations on that again as you get ready for dad life, man. Gonna be fun. So very cool, very cool. And Soo-Chul, right now, you're one of the best fighters from your country, and we're seeing some great things come out of Korea. I mean, on the same card, Siwoo Park, your fellow countrywoman, she's doing amazing right now. She's going to the finals in her tournament to fight the champion. So, for you, man, I'm curious, how important is it for you to strongly represent your country and be, kind of maybe a good role model for the rest of the fighters and just people from your country in general?
글쎄요, 저는 그냥 말 그대로
Yeah, I think I'm lucky
내가
to
뭔가
represent my
운이 좋아서
country by
데뷔한다고
fighting in the
생각하기도 하고
fighting in the ring.
운이
I wanna
나중에 운이
I wanna
좋은
show other
사람이구나
people, other fighters, or just other
이렇게
people that
생각해서 하는
there's a life
사람이고
like this that I live.
많은
Yeah, I'm proud of my life,
한국의
and
많은 선수들이
yeah, I wanna show,
나
I wanna say that
같은
there's a kind
길도
of life
있구나
like
나
this that I
같은
live.
And how did you get into MMA in the first place, Soo-Chul? Everyone has kind of their different stories and journeys of how they got into being a fighter, a very unique kind of career path or profession to have. So, like for you, was it kind of something you always wanted to do from when you were a kid, or just how'd you get into this in the first place?
뭐
Mm.
간단하게 해야겠다.
I want to be short because it's a long story.
게임 좋아했어요.
He loves playing fighting
저
games,
게임 좋아해가지고
Tekken, Street Fighter, King of Fighters.
알죠 뭐
So
스포츠
as I
뭐
play those
스트리트
games,
같은 거
I
이런 거
see all
좋아했어요.
these
좋아해서
muscular
어린
characters,
캐릭터처럼
and he wanted to be like that.
빵빵한
But then he fought he saw some of the footages of Fedor and all these other classic fighters,
뭐 효도르
and
뭐
he
이런
decided to be
사람들을
like that. And he
그걸 보면서
found this Road FC
이제
gym
알아
5
저렇게
minutes away
돼야지
from his home,
하면서
so he jumped
이제
right in.
체육관 관장님한테 찾아간 거죠.
All right, very cool, man. Some good inspirations there indeed. Can't go wrong with some of those classic fighting games. And Fedor, like you said, I mean, with that in mind, like, would you say he has been one of your inspirations or favorite fighters, or maybe are there some other ones that come to mind when you think of those guys who had a big impact on you?
뭐 말은 이렇게 MMA 데뷔한
Yeah,
거는
I say
효도르였으면
Fedor
좋을 것
because
같긴
he's
한데
one of the
원래
representative,
저는 이제
of the
키드
sport back then. But he
야마모토
loves
키드
Yamamoto,
뭐
Kid Yamamoto.
그죠
He loves Demetrius Johnson, George St. Pierre, and Kouzi
좋아요.
personally.
표지도 좋아해요.
Yes, all some legends right there. Good choices, man. Love watching them fight as well. So, yeah, man, awesome stuff. And, we mentioned how you were around for the start of the Horizon promotion as well as Soo-Chul in the second event, right? But, in MMA, you've practically grown up with Road FC too. You were on their very first show and been competing at practically every one of them since then, man. So I just kind of want to know what that experience has been like, growing up in MMA practically with Road FC. And, you've helped build it up because you've been such a big star for them and have done so well.
한 단체와
Yeah, I grew up, with the Road FC and the build-ups with the MMA promotions. I love that experience. Fighting in other promotions like getting the title was a good experience. I had a hard time training for MMA fights, but all those hard times, now I think it's all good memories.
와서 생각해보면은 그런 고생들도 다 추억인 것 같아요.
Certainly, man, it has been a great career and one that continues to go onward and finding some great success. So looking forward to seeing what does come next for you, man. But before I let you get out of here, I want to, I'm curious about some outside MMA stuff. You mentioned video games, maybe in the younger days, but I'm curious, do you have any hobbies or passions outside of combat sports, Soo-Chul? Some things that you really like to do when you're not busy training and whatnot?
게임 말고요?
Without those games, he travels around with his wife, but he traveled abroad a lot. But because of COVID-19, he couldn't go anywhere for the last year. Nowadays, he and his wife travel around in Korea, go to seasides, go to those ancient stuff. He loves eating out at a good restaurants.
Oh yeah, can't go wrong with some good food there, man. But since you mentioned the traveling, I'm sure there's a lot of beautiful things you've got to see, some cool sights. If you had to recommend one spot for a tourist, like if I was to come and visit South Korea, what would be the number one spot you'd recommend to check out while I was there?
뭐 웅장한 거? 경주?
Yeah, I would recommend ancient capital Gyeongju. Has a lot of big tombs and a lot of big things. Anyway, a lot of big things you'll see like tombs, he said.
All right, definitely very cool. A little bit of history is always fun. So I'll keep that in mind for when I eventually make the trip there, but I appreciate it greatly, Soo-Chul. So, all right, man. Well, I will leave you off there. I appreciate you taking the time so much. I want to congratulate you again on the big victory and becoming a father here soon. Congrats on that. Very cool, man. Exciting stuff. You got a lot going on, so a busy guy, I can imagine. So I just want to say thank you so much again for chatting. It was great, man, and I look forward to seeing whatever's next for you, no matter where it is, which cage or ring it is in. You're an exciting fighter to watch, man. So I wish you the best of luck with everything going forward.
아, 감사합니다. Thank you.
We couldn't have episode 20 without the GOAT herself, Megumi Fujii.
ありがとうございます。2周年おめでとうございます。
Congratulations on your second year anniversary.
Thank you. Thank you, Megumi. Yeah, it's had to bring you back. You know, it's great to see you. Another year down, right? Last time we talked, I had my big crazy hair. It's gone now, as you can see. So another year down. I mean, just how have things been since we last caught up?
そうですね。変わりは。
So Drake, yeah, things have not changed too much on my end, but my daughter is going to be having a match this weekend.
Oh, really? Okay. I'm sure that's exciting for you. A little nervous, I imagine. How excited are you for that?
めちゃめちゃ緊張
Yeah, I get very
するので
nervous, so I cannot corner her. I always have my husband corner her.
いつも旦那の方についてもらってます。
I just have to watch from afar. And how old is she now?
今6歳です。
He's 6.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, good for her, you know, staying active, learning after mom and dad. Very cool. Did you guys get to do a lot of fun things for the summer as a family?
そうですね。川に
So yeah, we went to the river and did some barbecues. We went to the ocean. We did a lot of swimming with
たく
my
さん
with our daughter
なんだろ
this year.
う泳ぎました。娘と一緒に。
Yeah, very fun. Some good summer activities for sure. And you mentioned the nerves of Saku-chan's match, but you know, Shinji also has a fight coming up. His second fight in Ryzen? That's very cool, very exciting. Are you more nervous for, I imagine, Saku's match coming up? But do you get nervous as well for Shinji's fights, or is it kind of like, you know, he's obviously had a full career himself, kind of used to seeing him fight by now? Just how do you kind of compare the two in terms of when you're getting ready for those as a family member?
そうですね。そうですね。佐々木
So ever since we've gotten married, Sasaki he's been working out. He's been training 6 days a week nonstop.
結婚してから
And
も
his life as a fighter, he has continued that rather he has a fight or not. So just because the fight has been confirmed, it's like nothing has really changed as far as his everyday routine goes. So we try not to think about any negative stuff before a fight, because that affects us mentally. So we just try to stay positive and just continue to do what we do. So it's that kind of mentality for Sasaki.
Yeah, totally understandable. And Megumi, last time we caught up, we talked a bit about like that coach and kind of fighter dynamic of fighters who are dating each other in relationships or whatever. But I actually have never asked you, how did you guys meet in the first place? Is there a fun story there?
そうですね。私はもうずっと現役
So when I was
東京でやってて
competing, I would station myself in Tokyo. And Sasaki was located in Fukuyama, different parts of Japan. So we really didn't have direct contact at all, but we had a mutual sponsor, we were sponsored by the same apparel company in Spirit. And when they had their filming session amongst with all their fighters, that's when we first met. We talked a little bit. Where he lives, Fukuyama, happened to be very close to where I grew up in. So my hometown was very close to where he lives. So, we started talking about once I go back, can we train together? Can I train at your gym, etc. And, that was kind of the beginning.
Okay, so did you guys then, get together in a relationship when you were still fighting Megumi, or was it kind of right after? Like, I'm trying to figure out the timeline here a little bit.
現役引退する前ぐらい
I think it was right before
住んでるところ
right before I retired.
あんまり会ってなくて
it was probably somewhere in a period where I was, still active, but we lived in totally different cities. So we didn't really see each other. And, back then we didn't have these types of tools to communicate. So it was just mostly just calling each other on the phone. But yeah, I think it was right around that, my retirement fight or somewhere around there.
Okay. Well, I only ask because I'm very curious, how you think that having, that relationship, that stability, this different kind of stability in your life throughout your whole career would have maybe changed things. Do you think it would have been, more helpful to have, a fellow fighter as your partner throughout your entire career? Or maybe would that have been more of a distraction? Like, I know it's a big what if situation, but I'm curious how you think that might have changed things for you as a fighter.
そうですね。どうなんだろう。いや、多分、何も変わらない。
So for me, I think it was
過去に
perfect
つ
as
い
it
ては
was. I don't really
そのままの方
think
が
I
良
should
かっ
change
たと
anything
思うん
looking
で
back
す
in
け
the
ど、
past. But obviously,
なんだろう。
when there's
まあ、
relationships amongst
格
fighters,
闘家同士の付き合いっ
there's
て、まあ、芸術
so
的
many
なこ
different
ととか
ways
お互い
of
の選手
each
とかキャリアに
each
つい
couple
て
could
すご
treat
く
treat
話を
themselves.
しなが
There
ら
are fighters
やってい
who
く
there are
カッ
relationships
プ
where
ル
they
もい
trade
たりと
exchange
かするんです
techniques
け
and
ど、
all that kind of stuff,
私
strategy to do
はど
everything
ちらか
together.
と
But
いう
for me,
と、
I just
干
kind
渉
of
され
wanted
ず
to
にやりたい方だっ
do
た
my
の
own thing.
で、
I didn't
ただ
really
その選手と
like
して
to
の
be
干渉は
told on like
なくても、まあ、メ
techniques
ン
and
タル
whatnot
的な
strategy,
部
but
分で結構
Sasaki
張り詰め
definitely
た毎
helped me
日
out
を自分の
mentally,
中で送っ
mentally
てたので、現
to
役時
point me in
代
the
に。
right direction
そ
when
こ
my
を、
head wasn't in the right place. He'd
な
kind
ん
of
だろう。
guide me through mentally. But
まあ、そこ
I
までちょっ
think
と考
we
え
were
す
able
ぎ
to
ないで、
keep
も
a
うちょっと
good
気
balance,
楽にっていう言い方変ですけど、考
even
え
though
方
we're both
変えてみ
fighters.
たら
We
っ
didn't
て
really
いうよう
get
なメン
into
タル
each
的な
other's
部分で結
technique
構フォローを
and
してもらえてたので、
game plans.
そこに関しては、まあ、キャリア終盤で
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's hard to deny. And obviously, you had one of the best careers you possibly could have had, as is Megumi. So definitely maybe best to not change anything. It's all working out pretty well. But to transition to, some other fighters that you're very close with, obviously Ayaka Hamasaki, who we're all friends and, fans of as well. Unfortunately, had a tough loss in the last fight with Siwoo Park. I'm just curious to know, haven't spoken to her yet myself, but she broke her arm, right, and just had surgery. So how is she doing? I'm sure you're keeping in touch with her after the fight and the injury.
そうですね、手術
So yeah, I was
する日もちょっと
messaging
メール
her
で
with her back and
や
forth the
り
day
取り
of
した
the
りとか
surgery,
して、
and she was
なん
saying
か
that because the surgery starts
7
at
時か
7
ら、夜
p.m.
7時から手術だから、もう暇で
Hamasaki
仕
being
方がないって
as
いう
an
か、
active
活動
person
的
as
な
she
ことな
is, she
んで、
said that
やっぱり
waiting
ブース
around
にこもりっきり
in
で
the
きる
hospital
のが
until
そっ
7
ちの
p.m.
方が苦
was
痛だ
the
み
most
たいなこ
painful
とは言っ
thing
てましたね。で、
um,
まあ、手術
for
も無事
her.
終わって、
But
その
the
影響が
the
収ま
surgery
っ
went
て、
well. She came out of surgery.
やっぱその試合後は
Obviously,
結
right
構
after the
痛み
fight
とか
and
あったりとか、不
you
自
know,
由だったのが、
it was
まあ、手
very
術して固定
inconvenient
し
for
ても
her.
らっ
She
た
was
ら、
in
だい
lots
ぶ
of pain.
普段の
But
生活もしやすく
but
なっ
after
た
the surgery,
というようなこ
everything
と
was
は
all
言ってましたね。
bolted in now, and swelling has gone, and the pain has eased down a bit. So she's back to doing her regular life right now.
All right, well, that's good to hear, and definitely sounds like Ayaka, true trooper. She's gonna continue on the best she can. But I mean, before that fight, Megumi, she took on and beat your old pal Jessica Aguilar, which it was really cool. For me, getting to see you guys reunite a little bit and catch up for the event and the fight week. I mean, I talked to Jessica about it. She said it was really cool getting to see you and felt like a full circle moment in her career, which obviously makes a whole lot of sense. But for you, like, how cool was it getting to see Jessica again? Was that a special thing for you?
そうですね。まあ、私も2回実
So I
際
fought Jessica twice. I know how I personally know
体で知っていたり
how
と
tough she
か、
is.
あとはまあ
And
引退
for me,
試合の
that
時も
my
ちょっとやっぱり
retirement fight
まあ納得は言ってるん
against
ですけど、
Jessica, it ended, but
なんだろう。
unfortunately by an eye
まあ、
poke.
消化不良じゃない
I'm
け
okay
ど、
with
最
it.
後まで
I've come
戦えなか
to
ったっていう、そういうやっ
to
ぱ
live
り
with it. But deep
気持ち
inside,
って
it's
いうのは
still
今でも
it
残っ
wasn't
て
like
い
a
るの
fully
で、
digested
自分は実際戦えな
fight.
かったけど、
So
まあ、
there's that
早く
part
という
of
形
me
で戦っ
that's
て
always
いる
had that
こ
little
ととか、
thorn
浜
inside
崎自体
myself
もその
about that fight.
十何年前の大
And then,
震災で
obviously,
戦う
Hamasaki was
予定だ
supposed
っ
to
たの
fight
が
her
なく
back
な
in
って、
2011, got
こん
canceled
な
in a
に
very
時を経
dramatic
て、
way.
そこでのこ
And,
の
for
3点が交わ
us
る
three
ことって、
to be
なんか
in the
誰も
same
その
area
時は
after
想
all
像し
these
なかっ
years,
た
it's
と思うん
definitely
ですけれ
something,
ども、そういうのを考え
emotionally,
る
it's
と
very
本当
something
に
special.
感
And
慨深いマッチメイクだったなっていうのは
I
あり
think
ますね。ただやっぱ
from
り
my
ジェ
point
シ
of
カ
view,
を
I know how
やっぱ
tough
当時の強さを
Jessica
考える
was, so I
と、
really didn't want to be
1回
facing her
戦
in
目
the
で
first
来てほしくない
first
な
round
っ
of
て
the
いうのは、
tournament.
まあ、
But when you look around and think about the storylines, when you think of everything, it just made sense. And I think Hamasaki also felt like she didn't want anybody else to beat Jessica before she did. So, we both talked about it, and we accepted the fight and just said that we're gonna have to do this. So in many ways, it was very, very emotional, and there's definitely a special feeling about that fight.
Yeah, it definitely made for a very cool story, with not only their history, but, yours as well linked into it. It was just like a big old, just a crazy thing in terms of, the history for the women. So it was definitely awesome to see. But, you mentioned the tournament right there. And I want to get your thoughts on, the champion right now, Seika Izawa, who obviously had her 2 fights with, Hamasaki as well and beat her, which was crazy at the time. But, she's continued to look very much like she is rightfully the champion. So, and still very young, Megumi, and her story's kind of crazy how quickly she's got into MMA and where she is now. So I'm just very fascinated by her journey and how talented she is. But I want to know from your perspective, like, what do you make of, this fighter who's on the rise right now and the current champion?
そうですね。ミク選手
So I think she kind of reminds me of a fighter called Miku, who quickly became a rising star and became a champion back in the day. Her creativity, the way she fights, their style, definitely reminds me of Miku. But I also think that she has something that's natural. It's definitely something that's gifted, because she has a background of judo, sumo, and then MMA. But if you think about, I'm sorry, in wrestling. But if you think about, if you had all those 3 combinations, would everybody turn out to be like Izawa-san? I don't think so, because she's very good at bonding those 3 techniques together and utilizing it in her own way. So she has that intuition to put all these skill sets together. So I think that's what makes her special.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. And I'm assuming you mean Miku Matsumoto from back in the day, right? She was the most popular Miku that comes to mind.
Yes, Miku Matsumoto.
Okay, all right, yes. And before I let you go here, Megumi, I know we're strapped on time a little, but I could talk to you forever. But I'm curious, do you keep up much with MMA in the U.S. right now? Like the UFC in particular? Like, do you still keep up at all with what's going on over there?
細かくは見てないんですけど、一応、
So I don't necessarily follow the UFC right now, but I do watch them occasionally. The gym members would, bring over DVDs of previous events. We'd look over for some techniques and stuff like that. But I don't think I can get the faces and names to match. But I watch for techniques and stuff. And obviously, if there's women's fights, I'll watch those. But I don't necessarily follow it, but I do pay attention.
Okay, all right. Well, that is totally fine. I was only asking, though, because I'm curious, one of your past opponents that you fought in Bellator, Carla Esparza, she's the champion once again in the UFC strawweight division 2 times now that she's done this. And it's just kind of crazy when you look at, the longevity that she's had and, fighting you like in her 4th or 5th fight and then going on to have this career that she's had. I'm just kind of, wanted to get your thoughts on how her career has played out. And like, if you would have assumed that she'd been able to be in this spot all these years later, after you fought her back in the day.
そうですね。そのタイトルマッチも見たりとか。
Yeah, she's been in this for a long time, and I was definitely rooting for her because she's been competing at the top end for such a long time. I think when we fought, it was like her 3rd or 4th fight, but she's been in it for a long time, and then she loses some, and then she wins some. So for me, for her to be, she's not a big girl. She's not tall. She's short, but she still performs and she performs well. So for me, she gives us hope that, us Asians who are not too big or who have small frames can compete at that level. So, I've always been rooting for her, and then it was definitely inspiring when I saw her get that belt for the 2nd time.
Yeah, she's definitely one of the smaller strawweights, that is for sure. So she's doing the smaller girls proud indeed. But always great getting to catch up. But, of course, we will again in the future. It is always a fantastic honor and pleasure speaking with the greatest of all time. Thank you so much. I cannot thank you enough. A big arigato gozaimashita every single time, Megumi. Wish you all the best with Saku's match. I know you'll be very nervous, and Shinji's match. I know it'll be fun. So it is always a pleasure, Megumi. I hope you have a great weekend and, just everything that you got going on in life right now. I appreciate you.
私のこそ時々ですが、こうやって顔見て話ができて楽しいです。いつもありがとうございます。娘と旦那のサポート頑張ってきます。いい報告できるように頑張ります。
Drake, thank you so much for being able to, talk to me occasionally, and I'll work hard on supporting Saku, my daughter, and my husband. So I appreciate your time, and hopefully we can talk next time and give you good results.
And closing things out, it is the Rizin featherweight champion and deep featherweight champion, Juntaro Ushiku. All right, Juntaro. Well, it's good to see you, man. Good to see you, champ. Just how are things going as we get ready for another big fight for you? Just how is life over there for you?
Yeah, I feel great. I'm ready to fight, and so I've been preparing myself well, so I can fight anytime.
Awesome to hear, man. Very excited for this one. And I got to know, summer's coming to an end now, but did you get to ride your Harley a good amount when there was nice weather out?
Yeah, well, I mostly had to train, so I would ride my bike occasionally to kind of wind down.
Of course, man. Of course, got to take in the moments when it presents itself. But are you a big traveler in general, Juntaro? Like, do you like to go around and see new places, or are you just pretty comfortable in the space that you're used to?
Yeah, I like going out and seeing new places, experiencing new things. It helps me refresh and reset things. So I like to go outside and travel.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And in terms of like the whole world, do you have any specific locations on the bucket list that you're really hoping to go see one day, whether it's a specific country or a city in Japan that you've never been to?
Yeah, I feel like I want to visit the United States again. That's one thing I have.
All right, cool. When was the last time you were there?
I went to go train about 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay, all right. Yeah, so that's been a good amount of time, man. It would be nice to get back for sure and do some more traveling, especially as things are, pretty open once again. But, before you do that, obviously I have a task at hand here, man. And, we haven't talked since your last fight when you had the rematch with Yutaka Saito. Another great performance by you, another victory, title defense, all that good stuff. I mean, just from your perspective, were you happy with your performance? Have plenty of time to look back on it now. Just what did you make of your most recent performance?
I feel like I could have went for the finish. I feel like I had some chances where I could be a little more aggressive. But yeah, that's my overall thoughts from that fight.
All right, yeah, certainly fair enough, man. I mean, I'm sure it's kind of tricky whenever you're going against someone you fought before and, maybe trying not to overassess the things that you were used to seeing the first time. Does that come into play at all when you're kind of mentally in the fight? Yeah, so I think it goes, both ways. We've definitely fought and we know what we can do. So, we definitely think about what cards they're going to play, how they're going to fight, the strategy-wise. So you have to think of what they're thinking in order to come up with a game plan. Yeah, absolutely, man. And this is always something I like to talk about with fighters, but, there's the mental side versus the physical side, right? And some people believe it goes in one direction more than the other. Some will say it's 50-50 between the mental and physical sides of the sport. But how do you feel about it, Juntaro? Do you think it's one over the other, or are they about the same?
Yeah, I think you need a good balance. So I would say 50-50 because, if you have that mentality and you don't train, you won't be able to perform. And if you overtrain, if you don't have the mentality, you might fold during the fight. So I think, I look at it that it's 50-50. I need a good balance in order to one to complement the other.
And it's interesting. I've been thinking about this lately too. Like, whenever we see fighters do their interviews and whatnot, and sometimes, the interviewer will ask, "Oh, how's camp going?" never do we see a fighter say, "Oh, it's been terrible," like it sucks. It's been a good camp, which of course, you don't want to say that things are not going well, but it makes me curious, man, like being a champion yourself and everything, like how do you describe like a good camp? What makes it good? Because they're always hard, right? It's always a difficult time preparing to fight somebody, but like what makes it good though?
So I think at the beginning of fight camp, we talk to our coaches and team, and we come up with a goal per during our fight camp of what to accomplish. And if I can if I can reach all these goals during fight camp without injuries, and if I can meet every criteria that we talked about, that makes it a good fight camp.
Okay, all right. That is some excellent insight. That is kind of, what I would have assumed, because, I mean, it's always difficult, right? Like, it's never easy work because, you're always wanting to be your best and strive to be better and better. So it's difficult, but I understand what you're saying there. And, it's interesting too, Juntaro. You're not just the champ of Horizon, but you're also the deep champ. And I want to know, like, 2 great belts. So I'm curious, do you have a preference to which one you like better, whether it's the aesthetic or the story behind how you won it? Do you like one belt over the other?
Yeah, so both belts mean a lot. They're both equally memorable and important to me. Obviously, without the deep belt, I wouldn't be able to challenge the Horizon, the belt. And so in that case, it's very important to me. As for the Horizon belt, I was definitely the underdog. I was put in there to. The odds were against me, but I was able to overcome those odds and become champion. So that's a very important part of my career accomplishments as well.
Yeah, can't really go wrong with either of them, man. You've had a good journey up until this point and going on strong. And, since we last talked as well, Juntaro, your teammate, a fellow double champ of Deep and Horizon, Sayaka Izawa, has continued to have great success herself. And, having watched, her train and been close to her, like, I imagine that it's not surprising to you to see her continue to be as good as she has and now going into the Horizon Super Atomweight Finals. But like from your perspective, though, like how cool is it to see, both of you guys continue to do very well, but just her path at such a young age?
I have a lot of great things to say about her. I've watched her train. She trains hard. She puts in a lot of effort, and she listens to the coach too. So that's one thing that I really respect about her, because I see that every day, and I see her work ethic up close. So I've got nothing but respect for her.
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's been really great to watch both your guys' journeys, thus far, like I said, and excited to see what the future holds. And immediately for you, man, obviously it's the Kleber Koike matchup, main event of Horizon 39. Very exciting stuff. Big fight, a very dangerous guy. He's obviously got the ties to the lightweight champion. I'm sure you've been watching his career, both of their careers, I'm sure. But getting to fight a guy like Kleber, just what do you make of this matchup, man? Would you say it's one of the more dangerous ones that you've had in your career?
Yes, without a doubt, he's definitely the toughest challenger that I'm gonna face throughout my career, leading up to here.
So yeah, I'm very fascinated too, just kind of by the element of facing a specialist like him, Juntaro. He's obviously incredibly great with his jiu-jitsu. Striking is getting better, but we see that that's maybe his weakness, at least compared to his ground game, which is so good. So I'm curious for you, like, would you say that facing these guys who are super good at one thing is more difficult, or is it kind of maybe easy because not easy necessarily, but easier because that's what I need to avoid as best as I can?
It's a really tough question, but because you know what to expect, it is easier to come up with a game plan.
Okay. And so, like, I'm curious, though, at the same time, is there kind of that pride inside of you that's like, well, I would like to see how I can do in that area with him, even though it might not be the best path to victory, like that would be a great victory within a victory to, be able to test yourself there and then come out, on top still.
Yeah, so I have no plans, or I don't have any intentions for that, because this is MMA, and in MMA you have to fight where you feel comfortable at, and you have to fight where you're confident at. So that's how I fight.
Yes, gotta fight smart, lower the risk as best as you can, and that's definitely the way to do it in these kind of situations. So a champion-like answer there, Juntaro. So I totally get you. But it's interesting too, man, when you look at kind of where we've gotten to now and all the success that you're having. Like, there was one point a couple years ago, where you were on your first and only losing streak as a professional fighter, and I'm just kind of curious. Like, I'm sure that was a tough time for you, and a lot of learning went on. But I'm curious, just like, how much did you learn and take away from that time in your career that helped make you, the fighter you are today, and the champion you are today?
はありますね。はい。
Yeah, I did. There were some takeaways from that for sure. My whole way of approaching fight camp and training, I had to readjust that, and how to prepare myself mentally for a fight, how to prepare myself during training. There's a lot that I learned from that.
Absolutely, I can imagine, man. And you had a very busy year last year with the 4 fights that you had, and going to be 2 after this one coming up here. And I'm curious, you're going to try and fit one more in after this, if you're all fine and not injured or anything, and could maybe squeeze in on the New Year card, or just typically, I guess, how active do you like to be in a calendar year?
そうですね。まあ、年間2から3
So for me, fighting 2 or 3 times a year would be best for me. And in terms of, squeezing in one more, I'm really focused on each fight that comes up. So I don't really want to think ahead. But yeah, right now I'm just all focused on this upcoming fight.
Yes, for sure, man. Have to be fully committed to what's right in front of you, so I totally get that. But I want to look ahead a little bit, though, if you'll allow us here, just for some fun. But in terms of your biggest career, goals right now at the moment, Juntaro, is there anything you kind of want to achieve in the grand scheme of thing that you're really aiming for? Like, if it's a certain number of title defenses, as many belts as you can get, maybe go fight in Bellator, get that belt or something crazy. Like, do you have any big long-term goals that you're really hoping to reach at this point? As a champion of 2 organizations, it's already a very good start.
そうです。まあ、まだ明確には
I think it all comes down to my upcoming fight. I think it's a very important fight for my career, and the results will definitely determine what I want to shoot for in a bigger picture. So, that's all I can say for now. But yeah, this upcoming fight is very important for me.
Yes, fair enough, man. And it's going to be a very, very exciting one. I'm totally looking forward to it. Always looking forward to both of your guys' fights, so this is going to be a great one to main event the night. But we can leave it off there, Juntaro, man. It's always great getting to catch up with you. Always a fun time, watching you and getting to speak with you. So I appreciate it greatly. I'll give you a big arigato gozaimashita just for taking this time, man. And we'll be tuning in, wishing you the best of luck with the rest of training camp in the coming weeks here and the fight itself. So just thank you so much, man. It's always great getting to catch up.
ありがとうございます。
All right, Shingo, here we are once again. Another ending to an episode, a big episode 20. I really, really enjoyed this one. A lot of great guests, some familiar faces, but a lot of fun topics that we covered and whatnot. So it's just a good time for Rizin, a good time for MMA. A lot going on in the world of combat sports, really. So time for the community questions. Can't wait to get into them. Thank you so much to everybody who asked. And we'll be kicking things off today with a reoccurring asker. Appreciate him so much. Mr. at Ozeki_Jim. We're starting things off. He's first of 4 questions. He asks, this year we saw the fantastic addition of Anastasia Svetkivska to the Rizin roster, who seems to be the best kept secret in among the women in MMA. Just wondering what promotions Rizin is scouting for lesser known talent.
It's just connections, managers and promoters, matchmakers all over the world, and it's not like a specific promotion. We just talk a lot, and we just talk about what's going on within our own countries. The borders opening up, whatnot. Like we have Alan Boyd fighting from UFC South Africa on this upcoming card. Lara Fontoura, who fought Seika Izawa, she was the Paul FC champion, strawweight champion in Canada. So there's just all these names come up, and these new fighters come up as just through the network of connections and stuff.
Yeah, and with Svetkivska specifically, what she was from the
IMMAF.
Yes, and I know that was something you've kind of been keeping up with, just anyway. So it was like, oh, there's somebody, right, that we could maybe take a look at. And then here we are. So just kind of staying up to date with MMA, and then you can find things out in general that way. So, all right. And then number 2, he asks, or he mentioned, let's see, also arguably Soo-Chul Kim, who was on this episode, a good chat with him, had the best performance of Rizin 38. Are we likely to see him back, and will we see more Road FC talent?
Definitely. Kim Soo-Chul against Hiromasa Oyukubo, that was probably the best fight of, my pick. If I were to pick the best fight of the night, I would pick that fight. Just very high level MMA. Got to see everything, durability, the mental strength, the techniques, and it was just overall a great MMA fight. Soo-Chul Kim, he came out up top. He's always been a true competitor. He's always been one of the top guys in the division. So I think we'll definitely be seeing more of him for sure. Yeah. And Road FC is kind of back on track. They kind of stalled down during the COVID times, but they still have their talents. They still have their fighters under contract. And Ji Yeon Yang, who fought in Okinawa, he's another one who's going to be fighting in November. So yeah, I think this relationship with Road FC is we're probably going to get to see more fighters.
Picking back up for sure. And Kim, as he mentioned when we spoke to him, said that he would like to fight the champ Horiguchi after that win. And I mean, makes sense. We'll see how things can play out there. Exciting possibilities at bantamweight always. So a good addition to have as an option. But moving on to number 3, he says, Anderson Silva said he'd like a retirement fight in Japan. Is that something Rizin would entertain? So Shingo, it's funny. We actually spoke about this a little bit around the time Anderson got released, and that was from the UFC, and he was kind of talking to everybody at that time, and he demands a lot, right, in terms of certain things. So definitely Sakakibara mentioned, I remember saying that of course he'd be interested, it's just a matter of making it work, kind of. So I imagine still the same case, and Anderson's probably, I don't know, his stance hasn't changed, especially with what he's getting into now.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. It all has to make sense for everybody, right? Just can't benefit, just one party. So our doors are open. Sakakibara-san definitely who would love to do it for sure. And it's just about just if it makes sense for everybody. And the situation is still the same.
Yes. And definitely with the tie-in from Anderson fighting in Pride, which a lot of people forget about, right? He had a couple fights in Pride. So, of course, Sakakibara would be open to, maybe doing something again. But again, got to make sense. We'll see. He's got to worry about Jake Paul first. So that's the crazy world we're living in. But with Ozeki Jim's last question here, he says, giving himself a shameless plug, says on the Todomashi podcast, his show with Ensign Inoue, he says, myself and Ensign discussed bringing in other big names for the international fans instead of Mayweather. Names like Nate Diaz, Eddie Alvarez, or maybe even a Jose Aldo. Would Rizin ever consider bringing out the checkbook for a big U.S. name for a big pay-per-view? So, Shingo, I don't know if we have to answer this because Sakakibara already pretty much answered this himself when we spoke to him about Nate Diaz specifically, who we talked about, not Alvarez or Aldo necessarily, but I'm sure the same kind of thought process falls in line there. So I think it's also similar to Anderson, so I don't know if we have too much to add to that one.
Yeah, it just all comes down to if it makes sense for everybody. And yes, definitely having bringing in these fighters, signing these fighters would definitely help blow up interest for Rizin, in the international market for sure. So if there's some strategic value or something behind it, and if it makes sense, it would truly happen. But
for sure. So just we'll see. We'll wait and see what happens. That's kind of how it always is. That's how it was with Floyd. That's for sure. No one saw that coming. And here we are, 2 fights into his career in a Rizin ring. Who would have thought? But all right, appreciate your questions greatly there, Jim. A good friend of the show and a great podcast of his own, as he mentioned there with Ensign Inoue. But we move on to our other star of the community questions, who's always up in here. Appreciate him so much, at KingCO24. He asks 2 questions, starting off with, will Rizin 39 and Rizin Landmark 4 be on Fight TV? So I'm pretty sure that we answered this on the last episode too, Shingo, but everything's back on Fight TV now for international fans, right?
Yeah. As far as for the events for remaining year, remaining events for the year, we're most likely going to go with Fight TV.
All right, so there we go, nice and easy. And then he says Japan will reinstate visa-free travel from October 11th, which is in a couple days next week. Let's see what day that is specifically as I pull up the calendar. Tuesday here in the U.S. How much easier will it be to book foreigners now? Maybe all the fighters had visas before.
I mean, technically, if you're going to fight, not even technically, if you're a fighter and if you're going to fight in Japan, you're going to need a business visa, right? You're going to need an entertainment visa. So that process is not going to change. But, as far as, just like entourages, like the Floyd Mayweather entourage, that they would be able to come in, without any visas. Okay. So, people who are working in Japan, they're going to need their visas. So that's not going to change. But, additional people who are there to, support or there to just not work.
Right.
They won't have to apply for visas. We won't have to apply for their visas. So, that makes things a lot easier. Yeah, for sure.
The leeches. The leeches, Shingo.
That word.
But all right. Those are King CO's questions. Appreciate you, man. He is the MVP of community questions, always bringing the goods. And then we move on to Philip. So I don't know if he has a handle or anything, but he put in a question, so we appreciate it. Thank you, Philip. You will know who you are. He just has one for us. Saying Ren Hiramoto has big star potential, including with the foreigner audience. His matchmaking has been filled with experienced opponents. Is Ren demanding these advanced opponents?
It's I don't know how to put the word. I mean, he's always been this a big talker, right? And he's always asked for big fights, and I don't think he wants to go back to like the normal way of matchmaking. Obviously, he's 1-2. Is he 0-2?
I think so.
He's 1-2 or something, right?
Yeah, he just won his first fight, his last
one.
Yeah.
It would be the right kind of matchmaking to put him against someone with a similar record, But I think he's already came this path of I mean, he headlined a number of series. Yeah. Without even getting a win. So, I think he doesn't want to go back to like normal matchmaking, like common sense matchmaking, right? So I think he's just gonna go take on these, higher profile opponents and see what happens.
Yeah,
he might go 1-8. I don't know. He might go 1. But Ren Hiramoto will still be Ren Hiramoto, and he'll I think. Even if he's 1-10, he'll still have a demand, I think.
I mean, we'll see. We'll see. But yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. Once the guy already gets off to, facing this level, he's like, all right. It would be just so obvious now if it went back that way. So maybe it's, a line of thought too. But either way, yeah, it's just he's still very early into it. So we'll see how things do play out for sure. But thank you for that one, Philip. And then we will close out here with Jay Wolf, who we know is one of the biggest Ryzen and just Japanese MMA fans out there in the MMA community. So thank you, sir, for asking. And he is curious, will Sakakibara release the Super Ryzen pay-per-view numbers like he did for the match? Well, Shingo, I'm sure you have some kind of idea about how it did, but if you could share or not is a different question.
I'm not sure. I mean, do we have to? I don't know.
He's asking, will he? I mean, right? You guys never really share the numbers anyway, right?
No, it's just when we used to do terrestrial television,
right,
those were numbers like the rating and stuff. But yeah, I'm not quite sure, man. I don't know how to answer that question.
Fair enough. So then that's we'll leave it to Sakakibara, the boss. We'll leave it to him if he wants to. But I mean, the match was definitely obviously a unique situation too, and he didn't even share those, right? It was the K1 guy.
Yeah, I think it was Concho.
Yeah, because I remember we talked about that when that happened too. But yeah, a little different. So anyway, appreciate that one, Jay Wolf. And that will wrap up this session here of another community question. segment here on the 20th episode of Broadened Horizon. We appreciate all of you guys so much for asking them and for tuning in. 20 episodes down. Crazy stuff, Shingo. The last episode was the 2-year anniversary. So many guests. I don't even know a specific number that we've had, but it has been quite a good run. Excited to keep it going. Thank you guys so much for the support. And make sure you tune into Horizon 39 coming up later this month. October 23rd. Going to be a good one. Then Horizon Landmark 4 is November 6th, right? I got that correctly. Yep, and so we probably won't have time. We'll see if we can squeeze in another episode before then. Unlikely. Either way, we'll have one definitely after. But regardless, you guys stay tuned. We're always doing good stuff over here. And appreciate the support so much, like I said. And we will see you next time.